Hi, my name is Brian Kaplan. Welcome to this week's Ask Brian, part of our weekly newsletter. Our weekly newsletter is called Monday Morning Data Science. We send it out every Monday. If you have a question to ask, I'll try and answer as many as I can. There'll be a link in the video description below. There'll also be a link to sign up for the newsletter. And if you get a chance, subscribe to my YouTube channel. So this week, I'm going to do another thing that I do kind of frequently, or maybe less frequently than I should, I guess, is to try and clear the docket a little bit and answer several questions at once. So let's get right to it. So the first one someone asked me is, what is a good book to learn probability? So that's this question right here. They asked specifically if you've had a real analysis class already. And then, but I think this might be of general interest. So I always liked the books by Ross. If you just look up Ross and probability, there will be a couple that come up. In particular, his basic book on probability, but then also his book on stochastic processes. They're both great. They do not require real analysis. If you require real analysis, the classic text that a lot of Billingsley, I think is how it's pronounced, that a lot of statistics graduate programs used is so-called Billingsley. It's by a sort of well-known probabilist. Some other great ones are by Durrett, and I always like the Chow and I think it's spelled Teicher, like this, Chow and Teicher books. So these are all high-level measure theoretic treatments of probability. Billingsley is interesting because he has the first part of the book covers a non-measure theoretic treatment of probability, and then the latter half of the book covers a measure theoretic treatment of probability. These two are all measure theory. I like Chow and Teicher is a very kind of mathematical book, kind of geared in the way math books are written. So I always like that one. I don't have too much experience with Durrett's book. Okay. So those are some books to get you started. I think and if you want to just pick up some probability without having too much math involved, I really like the Ross books. He's great at explaining these things. His stochastic processes book is just a classic for me. Okay, what inspired you to go into academia? And I think this question was more general of why would you go into academia over industry? And probably this is worth an entire discussion by itself, but I will talk just briefly about one of the key things you get in academia. And I would describe the most important thing you would get from academia is intellectual freedom. So, and what I mean by that is, if you go work at Google or a pharmaceutical company or Facebook, you'll get many of the benefits of academia. You'll get, you'll be surrounded by smart people working on hard problems. It'll be a vibrant environment. And there's lots of places where you can work that give you many of the things that academia would give you, especially, now that so many industries have become so technical and sophisticated. The one thing you don't get is this bottom line aspect of industry, where you can't just work on anything that you want. Google sometimes seems to be cited as being a great place to do that a little bit of your time, and there's some certain exceptions like Microsoft Research and places like that that have kind of really rare research think tanks that are like universities, but in industry setting. But really what you go into academics for is intellectual freedom, the idea that you can pursue your interests. Now, for someone like me that's in a soft money appointment, which means I have to justify my salary with grants, that intellectual freedom goes down at the expense of, some of the benefits of being involved in some interesting problems and health research. And for someone like me, where that's what I wanted to work on anyway, the cost of being associated with grants and the restrictions on intellectual freedom that cost doesn't change too much for me. So I actually like being in a soft money environment. But to me, if you were to ask me, what's the single most important thing that you look for going into academics, I would say it's intellectual freedom. Okay, let's go back up. Need for interpretable AI. I've gotten a number of questions about whether the importance of interpretable AI and its need in industry and things like court cases where AI would be sort of a testimonial. Um, and I think there is a lot of research into interpretable AI, and I should also just say interpretable machine learning. One of the big advances that I find very useful in machine learning are these variable importance. I'll just write this here. These variable importance metrics, to me, really help with the interpretability of a machine learning algorithm. So, like, I like to use GBM and random forest in R a lot, and both of them have their summary functions, the summary methods associated with them. That's a B, GBM. Both of their summary methods have the ability to come up with variable importance metrics. Super useful. I think if you go far enough down the interpretability route, then you just wind up back at classical statistics where you're fitting a model, a parsimonious model. If you have a parsimonious model that connects your data to a population, then you really are just doing statistics. So you can push interpretable AI to a certain point, and then it just becomes ordinary classical statistics. But if you want to look at something that is kind of a modern take on interpretability while still kind of staying very sort of in the realm of machine learning and AI, I like these variable importance metrics. So again, this is another thing that's maybe worth another episode by itself. Okay. Another question that someone asked is, how do you pick a biostat if you're late in a PhD program that's not statistics or something like that? You were working as a biologist or something and you need biostatistics. Well, I would say that is a perfect setting for massive open online classes. Normally, I don't just tout MOOCs all the time just because I've been associated with MOOCs. I still believe strongly that there's an enormous role for on-site education. Having said that, late in a PhD program, you're kind of done taking classes. Classes would really impact your ability to pursue your primary goal, which is your research. And so you need something that fits in with your schedule, and you can work at the pace that you need to around your primary research, and things like online education in MOOCs really do that quite well. If you have the time, the ideal thing, of course, would be to take an on-site class. If you're in a PhD program, which is what the questioner was asking, then you obviously have the, some on-site classes that you could pursue. But if you really don't have the time, your doctoral work is just taking up all your daytime hours, and you just really can't fit it in, then I would say pursue some MOOCs. We have, the Johns Hopkins. The Johns Hopkins Data Science Lab. I can't even spell my own university. Data Science Lab MOOCs are great. I would also say there's a MOOC called Stat Reasoning from John McGrady that I like a lot. He runs all the time. There's a data analysis and statistical inference from Duke by Mina is fantastic. It's a Dunk by from Duke. That is a fantastic MOOC on data analysis, and I would definitely look into that. There's some other tools that you can look at, like Swirl is really useful for learning on the fly, and DataCamp. DataCamp are all really good. And then there's some great stuff on edX. If you're, for example, working in computational biology or genomics, we have a genomic data science MOOC, but there's also one on edX that Rafael Irizarry led that you should check out. So I would also look at offerings from edX and Udacity as well. So they all have all these platforms. I mean, if you look up, and you can just read the online reviews, they're all very good, and that will give you plenty to get started on statistical thinking in your doctoral program. The other thing I would do is just, once it's one of the best ways to learn things is to just start doing it. So what you want to figure out is the kind of statistics that you need to learn for your work, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a ton of time learning classical observational data categorical analysis methods if you work on computational biology, where really what you need is more high dimensional testing and topics like that. So what I would work first on is kind of figuring out roughly the area of statistics that you need to focus on and then going after that. And there's a pretty broad enough spectrum of MOOC offerings that something relatively close to what you need will be available. Okay. All right. So that's a bunch of questions, probably more questions than people wanted for today. I'll have another one of these videos next week. And if you get a chance, subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll see you next week. All right. Bye.